Our next panelist is Sarah Poh. Sarah is a practicing psychotherapist with 15 years of counseling experience in community and in a mental health hospital. Sarah founded the Therapy Platform, a global therapy booking platform featuring more than 30 therapists currently. Her current mission is to empower qualified counselors to reach out by making their background information accessible for quick and easy booking. Hey, Sarah.
Hi. Hi, Sharani.
Hi. Hey, thank you so much for being part of the webinar today. I think it's very important for our viewers, particularly our victims and survivors, to understand that, there's no time limit to the healing process. And I think your sharing will be very important as they go about to continue healing and recover.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very appreciative and very thankful to be invited to talk about this very precious and important topic.
Mhm.
It is not an easy topic to talk about, and I really want to congratulate all of people who are watching this because this is showing a very clear intention that you are ready for healing. So, all right, let me just get down to it and share more with you about the healing process.
Yep, over to you.
All right. So, how do I start healing? In this talk, I will use the term victim and survivor interchangeably. I will occasionally refer to victim or survivor as you or us. What is trauma? Trauma is a stress reaction. Stress reactions that are normal reaction to abnormal circumstances. Trauma effects show up in different form for different people. Do not compare your trauma with someone else. Stick to your truth. Trauma interacts with our individual biology, sociology, and psychology makeup. How it looks and feels can be different for different people accordingly. Healing process is an individualized process. I will share with you later on about various therapeutic methods. Do choose the methods that you can relate the most. Um, any methods to begin with is good. I also like to highlight respect for different style of coping. Talking is not the only way out of this trauma. Sometimes talking can be emotionally overwhelming. So I would strongly suggest if talking is not your way to release the trauma impact, you can choose many other forms of therapeutic methods, which I will share very soon. I just want to briefly highlight what is sex abuse. But before I can talk about sex abuse, I like to talk about sex. I like to give you the definition that sex is what we are born with. So we are either born as a female or as a male, biologically. Gender is what we identify ourselves. Sex is also an action word, such as having sex. And having sex is not about just sexual intercourse. It is the full spectrum of having physical intimacy with someone to express your interest in another physically. Our body is ours to be whole and to give. When it is taken without our consent, it is a violation of boundary, almost like someone stealing from us or robbing us. Violation of boundary comes in various forms. It can take the form of sexual harassment or molest. Sexual harassment is a coaxing into having sexual activities without mutual interest. Molest is a violation of physical boundary by inappropriate sexual touching. Sex abuse, the most serious of all sexual violation, usually entails a systematic and ritualistic manner of acting sexually towards an unwilling person of lesser power. Lesser power can be in terms of physical strength, developmental maturity, or status. At this point, it can be emotionally triggering to speak of sex abuse. Please have self-care, take deep breaths, and know that you are in a safe environment to listen and talk about it. Stay here with me. The magnitude of trauma depends on age period, frequency, who are involved, and protective factors. Age period refer to the time, the age that we first experience sex violations. The longer it is and the younger it is, the more enduring and pervasive is the effect of the trauma. That is because our young brain and mind is still developing and does not have what it takes to process the trauma. Frequency, on the other hand, is not the deciding factor on impact of trauma. Take, for example, an once-off incident of being raped can have as devastating effect compared to other forms of trauma, other forms of violation. Frequency is not only referring to the actual actions of sexual violation, it includes psychological overstepping of boundary too. Being in the presence of the perpetrator, even without the sexual violation, can result in the same reaction in our mind and brain. The trigger is being recognized as the same as the act itself in our brain because it releases the same neurochemical and neural firing. Most of the time, the perpetrator is someone that we may know, or someone that we have trusted, or someone who has some form of authority over us. These have impact on the way we perceive relationship and the way we perceive ourselves and the world. I also like to bring in that where if there's other people involved, they can be considered as part of the group of perpetrators because they empower the perpetrator either by action or inaction. So let me talk about protective factors. Some of the protective factors are good inner resources, strong, healthy attachment figures, and external resources. All of us are born with our own unique set of inner resources, such as creativity, intelligence, confidence, courage, or passion. And some of us may even have good orthographic memory. These are resources that can help us to integrate our experience. When we are traumatized, most memories are fragmented. To be able to piece them together to form a coherent narrative is part of the healing process. Hence, our awareness is crucial. Each of us have strengths and positive traits that keep us alive and going about life. Identify them and know that you are so much more than your trauma. Healthy, strong attachment figures helps us to feel safe and secure. It is a sense that helps us feel okay even when life is not okay. Throughout our life, we have many attachment figures. Our first attachment figures are usually our parents and our early caregivers. They lay the foundation in how we attach to other human beings later in life. Other attachment figures can include a caring teacher, older siblings, uncles and aunties, neighbors, etc. So our entire attachment experience form the way we would attach to other people. So identify who are these attachment figures you can relate strongly to and feel safe with. External resources. External resources can be healthcare system, educational opportunities, financial resources, etc. These are resources outside of ourselves. Now let me move on to talk about the effects of trauma. Trauma affects us physically. It shapes our self-identity, impacts the way we relate to others, and most of all, affects our mind in unwelcome manners such as fragmented memories and flashbacks. In the book The Body Keeps Score, Dr. Basil van der Volk explained how our body remembers even though we may not remember consciously. Unexplained somatic complaints such as headaches, body aches may be related to repressed emotion. A common sexual dysfunction seen in women called frigidity may be rooted in sexual anxiety and trauma response. Because we experience the pervasive effect of the trauma on us, our self-identity, like it or not, is inevitably influenced by the trauma event. The way we perceive people and our ability to trust people is underlined by the experience of the betrayer. Hence, our relational intimacy is affected as well. In trauma, our mind may shut down in protection of us. Like a baby deer, fawn, being caught alive by a wild beast, the fawn may fall off consciousness as though it is dead. This shutdown response is nature's mercy to protect the fawn from unbearable pain. It is also the last resort in escape when escape is impossible. In this state of being in and out of consciousness, memories can be at best fragmented if not totally repressed. Flashbacks is nature's way to deal with the trauma in an attempt to piece up a coherent narrative. It is leading us towards completion of a defensive action. Let me share briefly about my experience with some of my clients on why it is so hard to talk about sex abuse. A client whom I have been working for the past 1 year hinted that she was used for sexual gratification by her male cousin during her preteen years. She kept this a secret, telling no one else except me. The reason why she kept this a secret because she's afraid no one would believe her. She is also afraid of the repercussion of unveiling this secret. Though she is angry and hurt by what the male cousin did to her, she is still protective of him and does not want to blow up the issue and jeopardize the relationship with her extended family. She is also concerned that her parents will be emotionally hurt. The fear of the unknown damage has kept her from telling, but this burden of secrecy is costly to her well-being, as she has to bear the shame, where the shame rightfully belongs to the perpetrator. Secrecy and shame protects the tribe from facing the repercussion and the brokenness, especially when the perpetrator is one of the family members or extended family or a trusted friend. This avoidance and protection against collective vulnerability blocks reparation work. This blocking against collective vulnerability, paradoxically, weakens the cohesiveness of the tribe. I like to highlight that though secrecy and shame blocks the knowledge of the wrongdoing, it does not make the impact of the wrongdoing go away. Another client suffers from depression that is rooted in her anger towards her parents for not punishing her elder brother enough. Her elder brother molested her younger sister when they were really young. However, after knowing this, though the parents reprimanded him, they still allow him to share the same bedroom with them during holiday. That got her not to actually speak about her own trauma of having been molested by her elder brother as well. Because this knowledge is being blocked from her parents have no idea on how to comprehend her animosity towards her brother. Therefore, the entire family relationship suffers. You see, family relationship suffers even under the veil of secrecy. Healing can only begin when this veil is lifted. However, a note of caution is it is important to think and deliberate carefully how this veil is to be lifted. We want healing to take place, not re-traumatization. In the case of abuse, there's usually a power imbalance. Sex is used as the means to assert power and control. Working on reclaiming personal power will be a great way forward to rebuild sense of self. It may not be easy, especially if you are up against a powerful figure. Know your legal rights and options can empower you in reclaiming personal power. Now let me talk about types of therapy. Body-based therapy such as somatic experiencing found by Peter Levine and sensory motor psychotherapy by Pat Ordent focus on resolving trauma through working with the connection between our bodies and our mind. Body works such as body massage and yoga are adjunctive practices very good to help build and repair our damage in our brain, the part of the brain that's in charge of our body regulation. Creative therapies such as dance, music, and traumas are ways you can express yourself without verbalizing your inner experience. Research has shown that a traumatized brain is different from a non-traumatized brain. Brain-based therapy such as neurofeedback focus on rewiring our brain directly. Neurofeedback is a method of tracking our brainwave and reflect it on the computer screen in the form of a game. A trainer of neurofeedback may get participants to control target on the screen using only the participant's control of his brainwave. The feedback on the screen informs the participants about the brain activities, which help the participants to become aware of their brain activities. With awareness, participants can learn to alter and control brain waves. Another brain-based therapy is EMDR. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is a method where participant is guided to alternate eye movement while in conversation to regulate distressing emotion. Very often, therapists may include hand tapping and audio stimulation in a session as well. Mindfulness practice, which is also called meditation, is also a brain exercise, good for rewiring our neural pathways in our brain. Cognitive therapy is what frequently people think of when they think about psychotherapy. Cognitive therapy involves restructuring of unhelpful beliefs and thinking patterns to those that are more adaptive to current living. Attachment-focused therapy comes from the body of psychodynamic knowledge. Therapists who is attachment-focused can help guide clients towards understanding of attachment style and ways about getting attachment needs met. Lastly, medication. Sometimes we may need to have medication to bring us to a level that we can still function. Look for a psychiatrist that you can connect well with, because how you respond to the medications is actually closely linked with your experience when you're seeing the psychiatrist. I would only talk about therapy process for the beginning phase of therapy because there's just way too much to cover. The first thing I do when I start doing therapy is to establish safe environment. Feeling safe in the present is setting up the stage for us to work on past trauma where we do not feel safe. Besides feeling safe in the therapy environment, it is also important that you are having a stable life right now, such as having stable relationships or having stable jobs or having a secure living space. It is also important for you to be able to talk about stabilizing methods when you feel dysregulated, because when we talk about trauma, it is very common to feel dysregulated. So talk to your therapist about it even before you talk about trauma. And with all the therapy, we actually want to encourage this word called interoception, which is a knowledge of knowing what is happening within our body. I'd like you to find a therapist who are using strength-based approach as well, because having an awareness of our internal resource equip us to deal with difficult stuff of our trauma. Lastly, in the first few sessions, I will assess the extent of repressed memories and dissociation, if any. It is unsurprising that we repress and dissociate traumatic memories. The extent of them can give me a clue on the length, frequency, and pace of therapy with my client. I'm coming to one of my last slides already, and that is about choosing therapists. Besides technical knowledge and years of therapy experience, I'd like you to look for someone who shows empathy and care and are engaging. Avoid therapists who are uncomfortable working with trauma or whom you feel are rejecting. Therapy's personal attributes play a very big part in therapy success. To end off, I'd like to recommend some readings. The Body Keeps Score is by Dr. Basil van der Vogt. It can give you a wealth of knowledge on all these that I've mentioned earlier about types of therapy and how to work with your trauma. The Courage to Heal is a book about how you can recover from sex trauma specifically. Due to time constraint, this is all I've shared this time around. I wish you the very best in your recovery. And back to you, Sharani.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really informative. I honestly, before we got in touch and I started chatting with you, I really didn't know there were so many other alternatives aside from counseling and also what you call art therapy or creative therapy. So I think this information is very important, and I do appreciate you sharing, your experience in guiding your clients through the process of recovery. I think that's important for the viewers to know, that there's a lot of guilt and shame, and that shame shouldn't be the burden of the victims. It should be moved on to the perpetrators, and that's exactly what Mastura also mentioned earlier. So thank you so much. I'll be with you shortly at the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks. We actually have quite a few questions, for Sarah. So I'm going to bring her back on. Hi, Sarah. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hi. Okay,
Hi.
we do have a few questions. I'm just gonna start off first. And this question actually ties back to what Mastura shared earlier about shame and the burden of shame. So the first question is, how can we help victims of sexual abuse recognize that it wasn't their fault? I think this is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Victim of sexual abuse think that it's their fault is because they try to take responsibility over the event. So blaming is a way to tell, self-blaming is a way for them to feel that they have maybe in one way or another, they can actually prevent the incident from happening. They may think that if they say something or do something differently, they act differently, they can have a different outcome.
Mm,
This is actually a way to regain control and to feel safe again, so that if the same thing happen again, at least they know that it's preventable and they can actually move themselves out of the difficult situation. So it's actually a survival thinking. However, self-blaming is incurs a lot of negative emotion towards oneself, and I think it's a very costly way to actually think of how you can survive. I would suggest the victim survivors to practice self-compassion instead. And from that place of self-compassion, I think it's much easier to review preventive measures.
So then how do we help them deal with blame and shame? And also the last question is, how do we make the flashbacks go away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So blame and shame they are like twins to each other. Yeah. I like to share more beside the function that I have
Mm-hmm,
mentioned earlier about blame.
mm-hmm,
Um, so now I like to talk about shame. Actually, shame is actually rooted in the belief that you are inherently wrong. You are inherently flawed. You know, there's something bad about you. So when something bad happens to us, um, we may go away thinking that it's because we are no good, right? So this is
mm-hmm,
a belief actually, and belief is amendable. It can be changed.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. So we just have to choose helpful beliefs that serve us and not against us. What is done to us is has little to do with us,
mm-hmm,
and it's everything to do with the person who did the wrongdoing.
mm-hmm,
Our job is actually to heal so that we are no longer having to carry the burden of this wrongdoing. And to your next question about flashbacks,
mm-hmm,
so in my talk earlier, flashbacks is mind's way of integrating information into a coherent narrative.
mm-hmm,
So without integration, we are fragile.
mm-hmm,
So if you think about it, flashbacks is actually nature's way to get us to integrate. And that is actually the key goal of any therapy. And I actually recommend that you start off, victim survivor, to start off with brain based therapy such as neurofeedback and EMDR, and also body based therapy such as somatic experiencing to begin the healing process.
mm-hmm. Okay. So, sorry, you mentioned earlier about, like coming up with a better belief to shift away the blame because it is not the fault of the victim. Would you be able to cite an example? What kind of belief that, they can start off with? I think it may be
Mm,
helpful for our viewers. Yeah.
okay, let me think of what my clients' beliefs are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, fortunately, actually, those two clients that I've mentioned in the talk, they don't have any um, the kind of blame on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I have worked with another
Mm-hmm.
traumatized client, and actually her mother tells her that if she would have dressed differently, she would not have drawn the attention to her, and she would not have been robbed. So in her case, she was being robbed, you know. So her mother actually tells her that she could have done something differently. And I would think that the mother is actually having a projection of herself, like as though if she have done something differently, these bad things will not happen to her. So this is one of the beliefs that is passed on from one person to another. But very often we can do the same to ourselves by thinking that we could have done something differently. Yeah.
Okay, so basically is to tell ourselves that, that whatever we did, that nothing could have changed it because we weren't the cause of it. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, because I think it's very important to impress upon the viewers, particularly our victims and survivors, that the trauma they experience is very real. They shouldn't even doubt that, and that they should take their time, in their healing journey. And I think your recommendation in terms of the different types of treatment to start off with would be very helpful. And of course, importantly, to get yourself a support system. So this is where
Exactly.
we, as family members, friends, or even colleagues, can come in to actually offer our emotional and moral support to the victims.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Most welcome.